Good to have you with us. You're watching The Urban Debate. I'm Avni Raja. Our top focus tonight, the crisis that our economy is facing. Now, latest data shows that there are no signs of an economic revival. One of the biggest indicators of the state of our economy is the auto sector. And like the last 10 months, August too has seen a massive fall in sales. From cars to commercial vehicles to even two-wheelers, across categories, sales have plummeted. So much so that companies are now being forced to halt production for a specific number of days, simply because people are not buying and inventory is piling up. On the other hand, startups seem to have started facing the heat as well. One of India's biggest startup stories, Zomato, has laid off 540 employees, and this after laying off 60 employees last month itself. Meanwhile, the real estate sector continues to remain in a slump. GDP growth, we know, has fallen to 5%, which is the lowest in 6 years. A few weeks ago, the finance minister announced a whole host of measures meant to be a booster for various sectors. Certain tax-related announcements that were made in the budget were rolled back to bring back foreign flows. In fact, the finance minister has promised more such announcements. But now, the question is, how much have all of these measures helped? Have they had any impact, or is it still too early to tell? Will the festive season be the trigger to spur demand? And if that even doesn't happen, what then? All those are the big questions that we're asking tonight. Let me welcome my panel, my guests who are joining in today. Dinakar Lanka, spokesperson of the BJP, R. Nagraj, Professor IGIDR, Jagdish Khattar, founder of Carnation Autos, Ajay Dua, former Commerce Secretary, K. Ganesh, serial entrepreneur and partner, Growth Story. Thank you, all of you, for joining in today. Mr. Dua, let me start with you first. You know, we've been talking about an economic slowdown for a long time now. There have been measures that have been announced. There are hopes of possible GST rate cuts across sectors, especially the auto sector. But we don't seem to be seeing anything in terms of a material impact. Do you think it's still too early to see an impact of any of the measures announced?
Avni, if I might start by saying that the measures which have been taken, some of them are only reversing the optimistic scenario on which the budget was based. I'm talking of the July budget, not the February one.
Yes.
And it's only reversing those, the FPI related issues, a surcharge, etc. And some of the actions which have been initiated, including on giving a longer depreciation for, say, a higher depreciation for automobiles purchases, those are going to have their impact in the medium term, not immediately. What is required to be done immediately is a sort of a pump priming. That means more liquidity has to be infused into the economy, and that can be done only by the government, because no one else has that kind of money or that kind of a stake in the well-being of the society. Whether it is higher purchases during the ensuing festival season, whether it is revival of the rural demand, or whether it is even some sort of manufacturing spur, all those are dependent on how much of immediate action or action the government takes which can have immediate result. And this is what has been done whenever there has been a slowdown, whether it's bordering, whether it is recession, bordering it, or even a temporary slowdown, say, lasting 6 to 10 months, as we have seen in our economy. So you are absolutely on the dot when you say we do not see any on-the-ground improvement, though I'm a bit optimistic that a good monsoon by itself could result in somewhat higher demand being generated from the rural sector when the Kharif crop starts coming in from next month onwards.
Yes, Mr. Dua, that point about demand is, I think, the crux and the root of this entire slowdown at this point. And we'll dive into that in just a minute, but I want to get opening comments from all our panelists first. Let me go across to Jagdish Khattar, since, you know, the auto numbers were released just today. Mr. Khattar, if you can help us understand, we've been seeing the sales plummet month after month. This is perhaps now one of the worst we've seen in a long time. We're seeing companies across the board now calling for a halt in production, calling no production days. The situation obviously is really bad, and also the fact that two-wheeler sales are slowing down so badly as well, which obviously reflects is a reflection of the rural demand.
So what's the question now?
So question is, if you can help us understand how bad is the situation on ground?
No, listen. You know, you yourself mentioned that there is a closure and all these things are happening. But let me point out that when there is a demand goes down, it's not necessary that the company should work their factories for all working days. I think that's suboptimal. It's uneconomical. So the manufacturers make an assessment if the demand is less by a certain number. So they had much rather have less working days and work at full capacity in order to get economy of scale. So let's not go by, I mean, if there is a closure, that means there is, yes, there is decline in demand. But the closure is also to ensure that on the balance days, you know, the capacity utilization on that particular day is maximum and you get economy of scale. Now, having said that, I think we are aware that there is a slowdown. There are various reasons for it. And let me make another request to all of us. I think instead of repeating is there is a slowdown and things are going down, can we start talking a little more optimistic in the sense that yes, there is a slowdown, but you know, the manufacturers are bringing new products, new things are going to take place. We need to change the atmosphere. Let me put it this way. You know, if the total demand was 100 earlier, now it is 90. Only 10% is less if you take cumulatively. So what we are talking about is 10%, which is making all the difference. Still 85, 90% people are buying. So we need to change the
But Mr. Khattar, the numbers don't show that it's just a 10% slowdown. The numbers do not show it's just a 10% slowdown. I mean, the fact is, why are we trying to put a positive spin? It's not wrong to be optimistic, but the fact is, people are not going out and buying. If you go on ground, talk to dealers, talk to people, everybody are saying that the people have stopped coming in. People are putting off making their purchases. We know even things like biscuits and things are not being sold. So where is the 10%? It's much more than that.
I agree. No, listen, I also heard from people saying that we have, you know, in the last season, the manufacturers had put a lot of stock in with the dealerships and the sales didn't take place. It takes time for them to wind down. So I don't know, I heard people say on some channels saying that actually it's 10 to 12 to 15%. The figures may seem 30% because they have a backlog of stock that is being consumed. So I don't know. I mean, one has to really go into say there are wholesale figures, there are consumption figures, there are retail
Mr. Khattar,
figures.
let's not get into the specifics and the technicalities here. We have had people from the industry, from the consumer goods industry, from the auto industry, leaders of companies who've come out and talked about how bad the situation is. So let's not get into wholesale, retail. Let's talk about it on a more broader level here and talk about the issue and why people are so scared of going out there and buying. What is the insecurity that people are facing? And Mr. Khattar, I'll come back to you. Let me go across to R. Nagraj here. Mr. Nagraj, your comments on the situation that we're facing. Do you think it's being exaggerated? Do you think the situation is not as bad as it's being made out to be?
No, I don't think so. I think the situation is pretty bad. I mean, coming back to auto sales, just over the last 1 year, across all categories, the sales have fallen by nearly 33% on average. I think that's a very significant number. So, and it is not just about automobiles, but across various sectors, as you mentioned in the beginning. So, I think what we are seeing is a generalized demand shortage. So, unless we address it at a macroeconomic level, we see where the demand shortage is coming from, okay, and address it in a macroeconomic sense, I don't think we are going to get over this problem. The problem essentially is that our investment demand has fallen, exports have fallen, and exports is exogenous. We don't have much control over it, but investments are in our hand, and investment can be revived. And investment revival will require, in a moment like this, a major push from the government. And that I don't see coming forth. And I see that is the problem. Once, if government believes that infrastructure investment is important, if industrialization is important, if agricultural investments are important, if they make a strategic plan to revive investments in these sectors, you will see automatically demand for cars and scooters and tractors going up everywhere. So I think it is a lack of a complete picture of the economy, and see the interrelationship between them, and see how to step up investments from today's level of 29-30% to 39% as it was there in the last decade during the boom. So I think the problem is from aggregate demand, basically investment demand, and which needs to be fixed. And this is not a short-term fix. We require a long-term strategic thinking about it, which I am afraid is missing right now in the policy circles.
Right. Right. Okay, Ganesh, coming to you, of course, we know that the slowdown has hit across the board industries. Help us understand in the startup space, what is the situation like at this point? We know Zomato has recently laid off 540 people. Of course, they have attributed it to the fact that, the technical reasons as to how their the dependence on support staff has gone down. But obviously, the industry has also been impacted by because at the end of the day, it is demand that has fallen and demand that has been hit.
Yeah, so firstly, I'll start with a caveat saying that I'm talking about the startup sector and startup industry,
yes,
entrepreneurs and startup companies. So with that particular caveat, I can tell you absolutely there is no issue at all with this startup sector or industry. If you look at actual data, you shared some data. Zomato is just one example of one company and one thing. We'll come to Zomato a bit. Otherwise, in the first half, the total investment that came into startups is $4.7 billion as per Venture Intelligence report. It is up from $4.3 billion last year. The number of companies, 10% more number of companies has got funded. So startup sector, we have seen growth. We have seen more funding coming in, more companies getting funded. One data point. If you take the other data point, you just look at the first 6 months, you have had companies like Delivery, companies like Big Basket, companies like ShareChat. Just in August, you had companies like Meesho and ShareChat raising more than $100 million just last month. And we have had companies, like I mentioned, having more than $100 million getting raised. So both in terms of total investment, the actual signals of companies raising money, startups are not getting affected. Now, there are multiple reasons for it. One is startups are small. These are not macro. We had esteemed panelists talking about macro. I'm not a macro man. We are talking about startups. They are small still, growing at a very fast pace. The headroom for growth is very high. These macro factors are not going to affect it. Take an example on the reverse side. If the number of cars getting sold is lesser, people are not going to travel lesser. Where will they go to? They will go to Uber and Ola and shared mobility. So shared economy will thrive. If it's going to be, if people's disposable income is lesser, they don't want to go and eat in an expensive restaurant. They're not going to stop eating. They will use Zomato and Swiggy to be able to order in. So in the startup sector, one, it is small. The headroom for growth is high. Two, lot more money is coming in. And three, there are enough business models that actually can benefit from some of the slowdowns happening, like shared economy or gig economy. People will be more careful about buying stuff. They will share more stuff. So a lot of it is actually positive for the startup economy. But bottom line is the data shows very categorically we are in a very good place. We are not getting affected. More money has come into the sector, and I think it augurs well. Specifically on Zomato, I want to touch upon it. See, Zomato has grown at a frenetic pace. They have employed tens of thousands of people. As a part of the business model, they estimate a certain growth, they hire for a certain growth. If the estimated growth does not happen or slightly lower growth happens, they have excess people, they lay off people, or in this case support staff, because they have automated, they have used AI, ML, chatbot, they need less number of people. They are laying off 500 people out of tens of thousands of people. It is not slowed down at all. And please understand, nobody is crying. In standard startup circle, this up and down normally happens. People grow fast, they project growth, they hire in large numbers. We have had our companies where we have laid off people, but that doesn't mean the startup sector or the company is in trouble. It only means that we have changed the business model or automated stuff, or the estimated growth did not happen. So I think as far as startup is concerned, in that caveat, in that sector, things are perfectly fine, and I hope it grows. There is no demand issue at all. Especially for core sector, roti, kapda, makan, education, healthcare, the demand does not change like the way macro car sales changes.
All right. Let's go across to Dinakar Lanka at this point. Dinakar Lanka, of course, you've heard what all the other panelists had to say. And of course, we know that the finance minister has been having meetings across various sectors with people from various sectors addressing issues. A host of announcements were also made. But the question is, at this point in time, we're not seeing the turnaround of that. We're not seeing that actually reflect in terms of demand, in terms of turning things around.
Challenges are there, but problems are not permanent. Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji is in consultation with industry bodies, and sectoral intervention have been answered from time to time. Three important factors, whether it is at the macro level and the micro level: cost of the product, liquidity, and earnings. On these three, government is in concentration. The cost, how to available cost at the best price to the consumer is the important thing. One is the manufacturer, how much they could cut off, and 36th GST Council meeting on September 20th, on which there is a possibility of certain announcements. As far as liquidity is concerned, already Honorable Finance Minister on 23rd August itself announced how to facilitate the funds to the NBFCs and financial institutions so as to provide lending for all kind of automobile sector. And earnings are very important. The consumer who bought the product, whatever the vehicle it is, he should pay out from their earnings. This is also one of the important factors. These are all together taking into consideration by the government of India. The government is trying to arrest the low consumer sentiment by improving the earning capacity and non-availability of the liquidity. These two important factors are going to be arrested. Most luckily, the positive monsoon, which is going to drive the positive economy in the rural area, automatically rural consumption will be improved, and it will have the automatic effect on urban earnings also. And very, very important crucial announcements which already made on 23rd August. Three important announcements as far as automobile industry is concerned. Number one, most of the government vehicles are going to be purchased through the various departments. That is one announcement. And increasing the depreciation from 15 to 30%, and very important, BS4 vehicles allowing for their operational period up to purchase of 31st March 2020. And very important thing is boost the confidence of the consumer and the positive sentiments in consumer. These are the important things which are taken into consideration by the government of India under the leadership of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji. So GST, liquidity. Liquidity is very important as far as NBFC is concerned. It is facing huge liquidity problem and NPA problem. So as to seize those problems, Union government is looking into rigorously how to assist and how to improve the things in favor of those entities. And the combination of certain factors are very important. The insurance cost, as well as the GST and the liquidity. These three important composition is taking into consideration by the union government, and so many analysts and panelists, as they told, that the portfolio of the infrastructure is very important. Union government is looking into how to facilitate the portfolio by means of rural infrastructure, urban infrastructure, as well as industrial infrastructure, so as to boost the industrial growth and seize the existing crisis.
Right. So, Dinakar, Lanka, of course, we are aware, of course, of the things that the finance minister has announced. The finance minister also said that there are going to be more such announcements being made going forward. Do we have any kind of indication as to when the next set of announcements will be made?
Definitely very soon. As far as GST is concerned, 20th September is the GST Council meeting, 36th GST Council meeting is going to be happen. So on that day, it is very crucial day that can be expected as far as GST is concerned. And other issues are concerned. Already, Honorable Finance Minister is in consultation with various industrial bodies as per the representations and the practically how far which are facilitated as per the requirement, it will be get announced.
All right. Ajay Dua, coming back to you, the question really that you started off talking about, the question of demand. That, like I said, I believe that is the root problem that we're talking about today. Even if now the rules have come in from the Reserve Bank, all banks have to adopt the new rules to ensure that the rates cuts from the Reserve Bank get transmitted to the borrower. There are all of these other measures in the auto sector, across sectors we've talked about. But the question is, if there is no basic demand, how is all of this going to help?
Once earnings
You're absolutely right, Avni.
Will improve the.
Dinakar, Lanka, if we can just get Mr. Dua first, please go ahead, Mr. Dua.
Okay. Yeah.
The fact is, what is required is effective demand, not the yearning to have a product. It has to be the desire to have a product, has to be backed by ability to afford it, ability to buy it. I think the slowdown in the economy, which used to be denied, in fact, till the stage of the budget, because the budget is also based on a business as usual assumptions of 7% rate of growth, hence buoyancy in taxes, revenues, etc. It's only subsequent to that we are seeing that the government is realizing that things are not hunky-dory. Now that it's clear, every possible indicator shows, including the government's own data for Q1, and I'm not very optimistic about Q2 either, because if we see the figures of automobiles for August and a whole lot of figures of other core industries also which have been released, it doesn't look that Q3 is going to be any better. With that, I'm not that one doesn't want the economy to kind of break from the past, but looks like we may have to live with this situation probably throughout the year, and we would be lucky to cross the 6% mark of GDP growth. Having said that, let me just say the effective demand slowed down, one, because a general movement, a general growth in the society was less, hence lower income. The incomes were particularly less to start with in the informal sector. When I say informal sector, it is workers in the organized sector who were on contract basis, who did not have a long-term employment prospects. They get laid off first, and we've been seeing that happening for quite a while. In fact, I would say post-demonetization, there hasn't been much of a recovery or much of an improvement in their lot. And as we all know, monetization was some years ago. And thereafter, the compulsion, probably rightly, but the rates of GST, which have been imposed on many industries, and on top of it, the compulsion to comply with it, has itself had adverse effect on the state of manufacturing. Otherwise, how else can you explain? Exports were never really important in our scheme of things. We are a domestic demand-driven economy. Yet we've seen the manufacturing growth come down to a paltry 2% for the whole year after being at 12% in Q1 2018. We need to be alive to this situation, and that is where I say the relief has to be given immediately by spending more money by the government in rural areas on whether it's Manrega scheme, which will bring more wages to the agriculture labor or the workers laid off in the organized sector, those who have gone back. We need to be making sure that more finance, consumption finance is pushed into the economy, and in that I would include the finance even for durables, be it from banks or be it from NBFCs. Merely the Reserve Bank saying that henceforth you are no longer, your lending rates are no longer linked to MCLR by itself is not going to be putting money into the market straight away. Yes, now the public sector banks were earlier able to push, transmit some of the repo cuts. Now the private sector will also be required to do, but we don't want to get to a stage where such compulsions push the banks back into a state where they become risk averse, stop lending,
right.
Otherwise they'll get into a stage of they've barely recovered from NPAs.
Right.
So some of them, some still struggling, that otherwise these kind of things which will be eating into their spreads, and which could also be saying that you cannot revise the risk profile of a customer unless substantive changes. I might agree with that, but the fact of the matter is the spreads which we are saying cannot be revised more than once in 3 years. Those kind of things could put the banks back in difficulty, and that's going to affect the liquidity and their ability to lend going forward.
Right. All right, let's get in some viewer calls. We've got Sundar from Chennai who's on the phone line. Hi, Sundar. Thanks for calling in. Go ahead. What would you like to say?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. See, this is basically because of the saturation. Okay, the number of cars, the number of two-wheelers are very, numbers are very high. Even for the one particular household, it's almost about 6 to 7 vehicles or 10 vehicles they are having now, because of motorbike and all. Because predominantly Chennai and the small cities are having. Chennai may be a major city, but I've been living there for many years. I know the increase in the population of the vehicles, and the fatality rate also in Chennai is much more higher. Okay, but here the number of vehicles, 46 lakhs two-wheelers are on road as per the record today. Okay, and the cars are very high numbers, and Uber and these things are putting the cars out of the thing. I have individual cars, the personal cars.
Right.
Like Uber and these people are using it now. The 60 years more, they are very much going for Uber and Ola. So the purchases are coming down because of the different utility services.
Right, absolutely.
And also there should be a sort of a thing. Pricing is also not really been comfortable, because 30 to 40% any car majors makes it on gross profits and all.
Absolutely, Sundar. So essentially what you're saying is that Uber and Ola have, people have moved towards these kind of cab aggregators. that is a fair point, but also one point to note here is even companies which supply to these cab aggregators, all those auto companies are also facing a slowdown in sales by 20 to 30%. So that is also another fact to really consider. But thank you for calling us with your view. We've also got Balesh Jindal, who's on the line from Bengaluru. Hi, Balesh. All right, his question, all right, his question is to you, Mr. Khattar, saying that how are manufacturing companies going to cope up? That's the question at this point in time. Mr. Khattar, if you would like to answer that from Balesh.
You see, manufacturing companies have to cut the cloth according to the demand. So as you know, as was mentioned, let me answer that. First of all, we have to think positively. If we keep on saying this, then we won't be able to do any turnaround also. So my suggestion is that yes, the demand has gone down. Now how can we revive? And the most important part of the demand is really the state of mind of the customer. That has to be positive. Now coming back to the question that how this is going to take place, I mean, it's, for example, today you've seen when there is a reduction in demand, the whole thing is reorganized. So that, you know, you work at few number of days, but you work at full capacity to get the economy of scale. So that is what is going to take place. It doesn't mean that, I mean, they could have worked for all number of days at 70% capacity utilization, but they work at less number of days at 100% capacity utilization. So I think this sort of a alignment keeps on taking place in that, in the industry. And at the end of it, my suggestion would be, you know, every week the situation is not going to change. It's going to take time. We need to create an environment that, yes, we have been having a difficult time, we can come out of it. I think, what is it? People, if only 10% of the people postpone their buying, listen, 40, 50% of the people buy for the first time. Balance 50% are either buying exchange for an upgrade or an additional one. They can postpone their buying and it can make all the difference. So we need to first create an environment that, yes, there was a difficult time, but it's getting resolved. The customer confidence, consumer confidence and all that must come back if we want to revive. You know, you can keep on having any number of policies and incentives or whatever. If the buyer doesn't have that confidence, he will not buy. So my request is we should get rid of being negative. Yes, it's a difficult situation, but it can improve by some positivity and some steps which the government is taking, and it's not going to take place overnight. It's going to be a slow process, but it should be in the positive way.
All right. Professor Nagraj, you know, if I can come to you here, of course, it's one thing, like Mr. Khattar is saying, to have a positive outcome, I mean, to have a positive mindset, really. But the question is that at this point in time, in my opinion, people are scared of losing jobs. People are not sure if they're going to have jobs when they come out of college. And that's the kind of fear in people's mind that's stopping them not only to buy, I mean, of course, let's not even consider real estate at this point in time, but whether we look at cars, whether we look at two-wheelers, whether we look at even consumer goods like biscuits and other daily use items.
Yeah, I think, you know, the consumer confidence will come back when you have income and employment growing. See, in a situation of economic slump, the confidence can be brought back only by the state. I mean, this is the old well-known Keynesian percept. Okay, so unless the state plays a role to revive the economy when the economy is in the slump, that's the best way to go about it. And state simply cannot wish away that, you know, consumer confidence will revive on its own. No, it will not, and not by simply tinkering at few rates. It has to step up public expenditure, and public expenditure is best when it is spent on capital formation, that is investments, and that is the way for the economy to revive. And we know that economy is starved of investments in variety of sectors, and that's where the state can play an active role. Once the people see that employment is growing, incomes are growing, they will automatically go to the market and start purchasing goods and services. So this is where I think the state has to play the biggest role in reviving the economy. Once the animal spirits of the private sector are are back back in good shape, then state can gradually withdraw. But at this moment, when the economy is in a bad shape, when the consumer confidence is in a bad shape, the only actor which can revive or which can set things right is a big role of the state, which I'm afraid the government is not willing to take. And that's why I think I make this point again and again, that the state in this present juncture has to play a far bigger role than what it is at the moment willing to play.
Right. So, Professor Nagaraj, if I can just take this question to you, the fact that, of course, the auto industry has been demanding a GST cut, perhaps something that the GST Council is going to look into at the upcoming council meet on the 20th. But my question is this, a combination of the festive season along with the possible GST cut, which we don't know if that's going to happen, but if it does, is that going to be sufficient to spur demand for the sector?
Yes, GST cut may definitely may improve a situation somewhat. I cannot offhand say how much it will improve. Surely the GST rates look very high, and I hope the rates are more reasonable. I mean, but on the agriculture front, yes, Kharif, if there is a good Kharif crop, it can make a difference. But given that we have had huge floods across the country, and the overall the net sown area or the gross sown area in Kharif is less than last year as per the Agriculture Ministry's estimation, I am not sure that the Kharif output this season is likely to be more than last season. So if maybe I'm pessimistic, I hope I'm wrong, but given that Kharif is unlikely to be very good, the revival of demand from agriculture is unlikely to come up in the next quarter. But in the Rabi season, when when output can go up because the dams are full, therefore the irrigation facility will improve, and therefore the Rabi crop may go up significantly. If that happens, then maybe one can see an improvement in demand in third quarter or fourth quarter. So that's my optimistic picture.
And Ajay Dua, as far as this, of course, demand is concerned, but from a slightly more broader perspective, when we talk about this slowdown that we are in right now, compared to past cycles, compared to in your experience, what you've seen in the past, how bad is the situation? And is it something that we're just going to see pass in the next few months? Or is it going to leave behind sort of a much deeper impact?
The last slowdown, if I can recall, was in 2012. We are experiencing a similar slowdown in the economy 7 years later, but with a difference. At that point of time, the economy did not feel or was not on the throes of a recession, which is a prolonged slowdown, but it was at a time when the inflation was still high and the consumers were being hit because of slowdown on one side, slower GDP growth, and second, killing inflation. Today, it is a situation where the inflation is not high, ranging between 3 to 4% consumer or WPI, depending on what you look at it. But the economic growth which is taking place in the society has come down so much that they do not see themselves getting a job very quickly or a job at a reasonable wage rate, because we are seeing that in the last 2 years, the wage rate, the real wage rates have not improved at all.
Right.
All right, the inflation has been low, but and if the wages go up, only then the disposable income goes up in their hand. The other point I just want to make, just now Professor Nagaraj, who's very eloquently spoken about the macroeconomic issues, there is an estimate by the government and endorsed by some others that the Kharif crop, though it might be 1 million hectares less sowing, thereafter the rains have been well spread, well spread out. The productivity is likely to be higher, and there could be as much as 5 million tons of extra grains grown in this Kharif crop, which is what gives me a degree of optimism that the rural demand by itself, because of better rains, better spread out, and of course, if this situation because of the dams full, etc., Rabi crop could be good. But the for us, Kharif crop in India is far more important than Rabi.
Right. Absolutely.
Let me just say,
I'm afraid, Mr. Dua, we're completely out of time. I have to wrap up this discussion here on that note of optimism. Of course, the question still remains that what next is the question, because we know, of course, that the finance minister has been in talks with various sectors. We know that the government is listening. Several of the micro issues have been addressed. But at this point in time, we are not seeing that really convert on ground, because people are still very insecure when it comes to their jobs. Consumer sentiment is still at an all-time low. When will this change is the big question. When will we see the impact of these measures turn around on ground, or is there more that needs to be done, whether it's real estate, whether it's the agriculture crisis? All of these questions still need to be answered, but as to what is it that's going to change the root cause, the root issue of demand. Well, let's shift focus to the other big story that we are tracking today. Now, the man who flung his school friend's 3-year-old child off the 7th floor of a building in Mumbai allegedly planned to even kill her twin sister. Now, the police recovered a diary from the accused's home with chilling entries that read, "Kill the twins to get what you desire." The accused believed that his colleague in Morocco performed black magic on him, and to get rid of that discomfort, he visited somebody else in Morocco who allegedly asked him to kill a pair of twins. The man allegedly intended to kill both the girls, but couldn't do what he had originally planned because of the domestic help's presence.
अभी नया एंगल दे रहे कि ये ब्लैक मैजिक ऐसा कुछ नहीं। वो बच्ची तो आज उनका दोस्ती 10-15 साल से था, ऐसा कुछ है ही नहीं। ये बेसिकली फॉल्स केस है, ये बेसिकली उनका कोई रोल नहीं है। बेसिकली बच्ची खुद अपने नेग्लिजेंस से गिरी है, ये और कुछ नहीं। खिड़की बड़ा था, बालकनी था, बालकनी में से बच्ची खेल रही थी। 3 बच्चे थे, तीनों बच्चे अपने अपने जगह से खेल रहे थे, तो ये तीनों बच्चे को ध्यान रखना था। अभी जब ये बच्ची गिरी तो उनको पता नहीं था, दूसरे रूम में थे, दूसरे रूम के साथ ये 2 बच्चे के साथ थे। जब गिरे तो उनको पता, वो खुद नीचे उतरे, भाग के गए और हॉस्पिटल लेके गए। इन्होंने ऐसा कुछ किया नहीं है। वैसे आरोप इसलिए लगा है कि अभी ये केस हो गया, बच्ची मरी है, तो अब इनको प्रूफ करना है केस की भाई अब ये डाले किस पे एलिगेशन, तो उनके पे डाला। उन्होंने ही हॉस्पिटल लेके गए, उन्होंने ही इतने सालों से खेलते हैं, वैसा कुछ भी नहीं। और ये qualified or well-mannered person hai.
We've got Apeksha who's joining us at this point in time. Apeksha, this is an extremely chilling murder case that has in fact come to light, from black magic to supernatural powers, and this little girl being flung from the 7th floor of the building. Help us understand this entire sequence of events, and there have been more and more developments, more chilling facts that have been unfolding.
That's right, Avni. In fact, the accused here, 40-year-old Ali Chugani, has told the cops that he has supernatural powers, and it is this supernatural power which was the guiding force behind him actually throwing this 3-year-old girl from the 7th floor, his flat, which is on the top floor of the building. Now, the accused has been living in Morocco for the last 15 years, and he claims that one of his female colleague has actually used some black magic on him, because of which in the last few years he has been experiencing extreme mental as well as physical pain. Now it is because of this supernatural power that he claims to possess that he was told that the only way to get rid of this pain is by killing the twins. And in fact, the diary that has been recovered from the accused also mentions one line. Now he has over 3-4 pages written this line again and again, which says, "Kill the twins, save your lives and go to jail." And in fact, following the incident, the cops also say that he himself called the police control room and told them about his crime. Now, of course, the police are recovering this audio from the control room. But Avni, meanwhile, while initially the charges of murder had been under section 302 were charged, now also the other section of section 3 under the Black Magic Act has also been added. The accused has been arrested. In fact, in a recent development, the police have ruled out any sexual assault or even physical assault for that matter. Right now, he is in police custody till September 13th.
All right, Apeksha, thanks for getting us all those details. But let's shift focus now to another shocking murder case that has come to light from Karnataka's Belgavi. A man allegedly murdered his father and severed his head after he took away his phone, cut off the internet connection and forbid him from playing PUBG. Now, the 60-year-old man, Shankar, had retired from the police service 3 months ago. He allegedly had an argument over the game of PUBG with his son, Raghuveer Kumbar, in the early hours of Monday. Now, Raghuveer then allegedly stabbed his father and hacked him to death. The accused has been arrested and taken into custody. My colleague Shrija sent us this report.
This is one of the most gruesome murders which have taken place, and the trigger for this, once again, we are talking about is the gaming addiction, that is PUBG. Now, as far as this particular case is concerned, the person accused has been identified as the 25-year-old man Raghuveer Kumbar, who murdered his father brutally and then severed his limbs and head as well, only because his father stopped or did not allow him from playing PUBG game. Just a day before this particular incident that we are talking about, it was not just his father, Shankar Kumbar, who advised him to stop playing this particular game, but we see that he vented his frustration, the youth, he vented his frustration on his neighbors by smashing the windows. And we also hear that they immediately, soon after this particular incident, they apprised the police. They reached the spot and they once again tried to, in fact, talk some sense into this particular person, Raghuveer. But we understand that because he could not withstand the embarrassment where he was warned by the police, we understand he had to take this particular extreme step, because remember, even after the warning given by the neighbors or by his father, even by the police, we understand that he locked his parents in another room, his mother and his sibling in another room, and went ahead and brutally killed his father. So as far as the police case is concerned, soon after this incident, the neighbors were the first ones to inform the police. They took him to the custody. He is right now in the custody. They are trying to question him. Of course, like Dr. Manoj did point to the fact that this is definitely a mental disorder, so it would definitely take time. But prima facie, what we understand, that charges of murder have already been, in fact, leveled against this particular youth.
Shifting focus now, Lieutenant General S.K. Saini, GOC in charge of the Southern Army Command, has said that there are inputs that there may be a terror attack in southern India. He also confirmed that some abandoned boats have been recovered from Sir Creek, after which the forces are taking precautions.
We have got many inputs that there may be a terrorist attack in the southern part of India and the peninsular India. There have been some boats also which have been recovered, abandoned boats in the area of Sir Creek. We have undertaken measures for capacity building and capability development in the area of the Sir Creek, keeping in mind the enhanced threat perception. We are taking precautions to ensure that any of the designs of the inimical elements or the terrorists, they are stalled and they do not get the success which they are wishing for.
Well, we've got breaking news that's coming in. 10 Sri Lankan cricketers have pulled out from the tour of Pakistan, citing security situation in the country. Sri Lanka is scheduled to play a bilateral series against Pakistan in September 2019. The team is scheduled to play 3 one-day internationals and 3 T20s. Let's go across to Karishma, who's joining me on the phone line. Karishma, take us through the details here.
Well, yes, the Sri Lankan cricket team, the Sri Lankan cricket board, I beg your pardon, was today to have a meeting to select the team that would be touring Pakistan for the ODIs and T20s. But they decided to have a meeting with the players wherein the Sri Lankan cricket board security advisor briefed them about the security arrangements in Pakistan, and a total of 10 players actually pulled out of the upcoming tour of Pakistan. Those players were Niroshan, Lasit Malinga, Thisara Pereira, Angelo Matthews, Dinesh Chandimal, amongst others. So now what the Sri Lankan Cricket Board has decided is that they will be selecting other squad, and they will be sent for the approval to the Minister of Telecommunication, Foreign Employment and Sports.
Right.
After that, only they will be taking any decision. But top 10 players of the Sri Lankan cricket team pulling out of Pakistan because of security concerns, because of they weren't sure if Pakistan would be able to provide them ample security.
All right, Karishma, thanks so much for getting us details on that breaking news. Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Urban Debate. Thanks for watching and stay tuned tomorrow now.